Chindia from the Red Fairy Project. I hope you're doing well. So we are talking about being a spiritual girl or guy in a material world. And this is actually a subject I wanted to tackle for such a long time. And I'm assuming if you're watching this video, it's because maybe it's something that you've been thinking about and wondering how to balance. So being a spiritual girl or guy in a material world, I think it's probably my all-time favorite subject, and I hope this video really resonates with you as well. So this is something that I wouldn't have even thought about, I would say maybe 10 years or so ago. For me, I was living 100% just in the material world. I was completely involved, engulfed, attached to, identified to the material world. And I went through a difficult time in my life. I'll be honest, I had quote unquote a burnout. I think that's something that it kind of can mean different things for different people, but basically I had no energy at all. I'm not going to get into the details, but I basically became ill, unwell, and it led to that dark moment actually led through to a breakthrough in my life. And that's when I started, I guess, exploring the spiritual side of things. And one of the key tools or resources for that was the book A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And I will leave a link to that book below. And this, I feel like the title sounds a little bit maybe hard to relate to, but it was the book that changed everything for me. And the first chapter is a bit intense, a bit hard to understand, to be honest. So if ever you do read it, don't let that turn you off, then continue on to the next chapters. But it just allowed me to start viewing my life in a completely different way. Spiritual practice can mean different things for different people. For me, it would mean, once again, identifying when my ego is at play and when it's more like my soul that's guiding my behaviors, my decisions, my actions. And this is something that might seem completely foreign to you, and it might be. So then in that case, maybe like don't watch this video and you might come back to it like in a year from now, or maybe never, or who knows. But if you know what I mean, if you start being able to kind of observe your own behavior, and notice when sometimes maybe your ego is at play. One of the examples of when the ego is at play is if somebody says something a bit hurtful to you and you're like, I can't believe that she said that to me. That is your ego. Anytime when you have fearful thoughts of not being good enough or feeling like you're better than somebody, that's the ego. And the ego can get us into a lot of trouble. I don't want to make it into like a bad guy kind of thing, but it's the part of us that, yeah, it can create a lot of drama and a lot of stress. And it's really, really good. For me, it's helped my happiness. It's diminished my stress levels to start to notice when it's my ego that's at play. And this is something that takes years, honestly, to work on, or anyways, it took me years to really work on, and I'm still working on it, and I will work on it for the rest of my life. I'm not enlightened really by any means, but I do feel a little bit wiser, I guess, but I think I still have a long way to go. But basically, I'm able to tell usually quite quickly when something is happening and it's my ego that's starting to take over. So as I said, somebody says something hurtful. Now this can be a friend, a family member, your romantic partner, or a stranger, like somebody that's just rude to you, either like cuts you off when you're in the traffic, or maybe, I don't know, a cashier that's rude to you or something like that. And then what you decide to do with that is what's determining actually if it's your ego or if it's more kind of, I call it your soul or your inner GPS that's really guiding you towards the right direction, the direction that'll basically allow you to feel much more peaceful. If you go the ego way, you're going to be, first of all, you're going to probably react right away and maybe like lash out at that person because the ego wants to defend itself. If you go the way more of your soul, you just kind of say, this person is currently probably having a bad day, and you walk away. You consciously decide to not engage in that negativity. So it sounds very simple as I'm saying it, but when you're in the midst of that, usually at first anyways, it's just like the person says something and right away you react. You don't even have that space to just like really think kind of quickly, okay, what do I want to do? It's just like, usually when you're not kind of self-aware yet, you just react right away. And then that creates more drama. And then the ego might even like drag that along for the next, few hours in your day where you'll get to work and then you'll tell somebody the story of how that person cut you off or spoke to you, or maybe it might be weeks later. So you create a lot of stress and unhappiness for yourself when you let the ego part of you, like we all have the ego, when we let the ego really dominate our life, our days, our decisions, and our mindset. I like makeup, I like nice jewelry, I like nice clothes. Got this yesterday at Aritzia. I really consider I kind of have one foot in the material world and one foot in the spiritual world, if you will. And I find that's actually, that's what I call balance, I would say. I feel like that word is overused right now, but I do believe in what it represents for me anyways in my life. And so it's finding that balance of enjoying, for example, material things, but not getting too attached to them. And I have to say that this is something that I observe. And I mean, I've worked in the fashion world, in the beauty world, in the fashion magazine world. Right now, little scoop, I'm working in the retail marketing world. So obviously temptation to shop and consume is everywhere. And I think the key detail here is not thinking that whatever you buy, whether it's a new top, a new watch, will actually bring you happiness. And I think obviously that's what marketers are trying to sell to us, or I should say advertisers or brands. And that's what we, in a very kind of subliminal way, usually believe. It's like we look at, let's say, like a beautiful bag, for example, and we're like subconsciously you think like, I will be complete, my life will be complete, I'll finally feel at peace once I get that bag. That's honestly what's going on in the back of our minds. And sometimes we'll realize that, but often we're not self-aware and we don't realize that that's what's going on. And then so we can fork out a lot of money for a lot of stuff, and in the end, we're not really happier, right? So we have like a short-term gratification usually, where there's that buzz when you buy something new, and I'm not an exception to that by any means. I do get that enjoyment for sure, but then it's a very short-term thing. And then what do? Then you need to buy something else. Now, people do have that behavior actually in different ways. With some people, it's food. They'll look for that. It's kind of like you're looking to fill that like a void. So some people do that with food, some people do it with alcohol, some people do it with shopping. So it's different things. But when it comes to being in that material world, you have to find that balance. It's like you have to realize that I will buy that thing, I will enjoy it. It's not going to provide real, true happiness. It's just going to like provide a little bit of enjoyment on the short term, medium term, maybe long term. But then if there really is something that's missing inside of you, it's not gonna compensate for that. I'm out there in the real world working, constantly surrounded by temptation, but I also have this this other side of me that is absolutely essential for me to feel grounded and happy at peace. And one of the reasons for that is that way, when there is drama or if there is something that goes wrong in that kind of external life, I know that no matter kind of what storm might happen, inside it's kind of like a calm lake. And I'm trying to think, I think it might have been Eckhart Tolle that actually gave that as an example. And I thought it was a beautiful example of like, if you think of a lake, there might be a huge storm and, trees and branches and wind and, debris flying around. But the lake usually, like deep down, it stays really, really calm. And that's what personally I strive for. I want to be able to feel that inner calmness, not all the time necessarily. That's not realistic, but hopefully more and more often. So no matter what's going on, whether there's people around you that might be in a bad mood, maybe you find out some bad news, or somebody cuts you off, or maybe you had a meeting, you had a presentation, you didn't do that well. You want to be able to have that inner inner world, if you will, where you feel at peace and you feel like everything's going to be okay no matter what's going on the outside. And I have to say that developing that inner world, for me, I call it like your spiritual practice, is really essential, especially when the shit hits the fan. Because when everything's going well in your kind of external life, it's all woo, you know, rainbows and unicorns, and it's wonderful. But when you go through difficult moments, that's where you really have, when you have that inner world, that spiritual practice, you can feel grounded and you can feel at peace no matter what kind of difficulties that you're going through. It might be somebody in your family that's ill, or you might have, you know, financial struggles as well, and those things can create a lot of anxiety. But if you have that spiritual practice and you come back to who you truly are, and this is my perception, and this is how Eckhart Tolle and other, I would say, spiritual teachers describe it, is you really are a spiritual being having a human experience. So I'll let you absorb that for a sec, because that's pretty like intense. So we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and once we start seeing things that way, we can create a certain detachment from those experiences, especially like when they're negative, but even when they're positive, rather than being fearful that that moment's going to be over. It's like, yeah, it probably will be over and it'll evolve and move. That's just part of the human experience. And it allows us also to maybe cut ourselves some slack when we know as humans we have flaws, and people around us, they have flaws too, and maybe be a little bit more compassionate and kind and patient with ourselves and with other people. So I really strongly believe that developing that spiritual side can tremendously increase your happiness and contribute to your health, because I find that it really lowers the stress levels. So when you have that little, we say in French, un déclic, when that kind of light bulb goes off and you're like, maybe I could look at things differently and maybe I would suffer less. It's really a game changer. So I hope this is not too heady or intense. And let me know if this is something that you would like me to touch on more, if there's something even more specific. And like, feel free to like message me either by email. You can email me genevieve@rootfairyproject.com. You can send me like a message on Instagram or Facebook or whatever way you want, or you can just comment below the post. But I know this is the kind of stuff that's a little more personal sometimes. So if you have a specific question about that, or even you think it's of interest and you'd like me to explore this topic, this way of viewing life a little more, let me know. So, thank you for watching. I love you very much. Remember to subscribe/sign up to the newsletter via the link below. And I will see you next week. Love you guys. Bye.